Good morning, Terraforma Church. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to engage today in a little bit of a break of routine because we think that the situation we find ourselves in really warrants an honest conversation. And so we're going to step toward some topics that maybe make you feel uncomfortable. I know so many of us, we're heavy with sorrow and our hearts are just gripped with the tension of the racial injustice that we're seeing unfold right now. It seems almost like somehow we're moving backwards in time in terms of racial equity. And we want to talk about this. We think this is not a political issue, but a gospel issue. We think this is a chance for our church to lead the way, along with all other churches in this country, toward the healing of the human heart that has to happen, to help us overcome the sin that is racism. So, wherever you are today, from my house to your house, we're glad you could join us. Buckle up, we're going to have an incredible morning. Let's start by worshiping Jesus our King together.
Hey, good morning, Terraforma. I think that now more than ever it's important for us to really find time to dig into worship and just listening to both the people around us and God's Word. And so if you want to stand up, make this an intentional time of worship, we would love for you to join us. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my turn till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my turn till I met you. 'Cause when you called my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new, Jesus, when I met you, you called my name. I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy. Chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you're calling me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. 'Cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your when you called my name. I ran out of that grave, oh, out of the darkness to your glorious day.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there.
Oh, that's my. No, sorry.
Oops.
My dad messed up. Can we start over?
Yes, we're gonna start over.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there.
Welcome to Terraforma Church. We are the Rainier family. My name is Josh.
I'm Katie.
I'm Addie. And I'm Ellie. Thanks for joining us today.
Excuse me, young lady, what are you wearing?
My church clothes.
No. Go get changed. You know the rules.
Right now.
Once again, thanks for being with us. We get the joy of going through announcements with you guys this morning. So first big announcement is if you are not on social media reviewing Terraforma, we need it. Since everything is digital right now and we're all in quarantine, we're not the only groups that might be doing church online, and there might be people that are looking for that church experience online. So why not get our name out there a little bit more and maybe attract some more people to Terraforma Church? So leaving a review, you like Terraforma, what is it about Terraforma that you like? And that might help to encourage more people to join.
Okay, guys, I'm back.
Thank you.
Much better.
Need my
Can you
hat.
put your
I
hat
said
on,
that.
please?
Get your hood up.
Get the hat on.
Goodness, get
There
the
you
full
go.
effect.
Perfect.
All right, this year has been a little difficult for everybody moving up to the next level, and especially our graduates. We want to do something special to really send them off in style. On Sunday, June 14th, we're going to gather at Rockridge High School to do a big parade. So we're encouraging everybody to decorate their cars, make signs. Let's really make this special for them. And I heard a rumor that Terraforma is bringing their own portable parade float. You do not want to miss that. So mark your calendars, June 14th, 1 p.m., Rockridge High School.
Back to you, Mr. Justin.
That wasn't bad.
That was great.
Ha!
You're like super good at this.
Pew, 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 pew.
Hey, stop.
Pew, pew, pew. Ow!
At least Daddy didn't.
Hey, it's that moment in our morning where we receive our offering. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for faithfully giving. We were able to, even last week, for our Scatter and Serve Sunday, unleash a tidal wave of generosity to our nonprofit partners, and it's just so incredible. We want to thank you so much. We know during this time this is incredibly difficult, and so every gift we really do see as an outpouring of generosity, love, and support for the mission of your church. This is how we get by. It's how we continue to thrive. It's solely based on your giving. So we thank you so much for partnering with us to build the kind of church that Jesus called us to build and to work together to bring heaven to earth. Thank you for giving. You can give at Terraforma, terraforma.church/give. You can give in the Terraforma app. We can even receive gifts through old-fashioned snail mail. And we so appreciate your generosity. We really do see it as an act of worship. Thank you.
All right, this morning we're going to be singing Do It Again together, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that's happening within our country and throughout the world seems almost like an impossible barrier to overcome. And I think we get so wrapped up in all of the hate and the anger that we forget to look to our almighty God. And so this morning we're going to sing together, and some of these lyrics are, your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness. And then we say, I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed me yet. And I think we ought to remember that our God is a God that has never failed us and never will. And so when we're singing this song this morning, let's think about that. walking around these walls. I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle was won. For you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe I've seen you do it again. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. 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 stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet.
It's a first Sunday of the month, and on those mornings, Terraforma Church, as a sacred rhythm, participates in a communion celebration. Communion comes from a ritual that Jesus instituted as a way to prompt us to remember his sacrifice and what brings us together. So as we begin to talk about what this means when we remember the sacrifice of Christ, I want you to gather elements so you can celebrate together with your family. It's not important what elements you can actually gather. The idea is that it is the reality behind the elements that give it its significance, not the bread or the wine itself. On the night he was betrayed, Jesus had gathered around the table with his disciples. And I want you to understand something that maybe you miss. When we see this painting depicted there, we see, often these paintings come from the Renaissance period from Europe. And we see all these white guys with their long flowing hair. It looks like, like a table of Vikings or Norse raiders maybe. That isn't really accurate. These were men from ancient Palestine. These were men of Middle Eastern descent. They were different shades of brown, and their hair was dark and curly. And another layer there, Jesus deliberately picked people from across the spectrum of the issues that were divisive in ancient Palestine. Within Jewish culture, Jesus picked people on opposite sides of that spectrum. You had at that table a group of people who otherwise would not be friends, who otherwise would not be associated, and they were about to be unified completely and totally because the thing that would bring them together was more powerful than whatever the forces were that were seeking to divide them. I think now, more than ever maybe, we need to come to the table of Christ. We need to come to the table knowing that it's his sacrifice that gives each of us a chance at repentance and redemption, that gives all of us a chance at healing, that no matter what seeks to divide us, there's a chance that in the sacrifice of Christ, we find something that can bring us together. Because there we find a model of sacrificial, self-giving love. Right now, if I could ask our world to hold one thought in their heart, to hold one reality in their mind, to let it capture their attention and let it marinate in their imagination, it would be this idea that the very definition of love is leveraging whatever resources you have for the sake of the other, for the sake of those who maybe aren't like you, who don't share your position or your privilege. Lord Jesus, we thank you for bringing us together around your table. We thank you, Jesus, that in your wisdom and grace, you saw fit to set a table that would be so vast, everyone could find a seat. That no one would be excluded, that no one would be marginalized, that everybody, regardless of their story, regardless of these issues that seek to divide us, everybody could experience the common union with you and your Father and the common unity with one another. And so as we celebrate communion, we remember your sacrifice and we remember the realities that bind us together as brothers and sisters. It's a first Sunday of the month, and on those.
There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen, oh, the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen, oh, the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord.
Hi, church. I had the privilege of sitting down with some people that I really respect and love, really to be their student, to learn from their perspectives. I really feel like James, the brother of Jesus, taught that we should be slow to speak and quick to listen. And I feel like it's overdue for us to begin this conversation. I really do. And I, as your pastor, I'm just trying to tell you that I'm trying to move toward this with a humble heart, with ears to listen, and a mind to learn. I want to learn how we can begin to engage this issue in a way that looks like Jesus-shaped love. And so as a gesture in that direction, I invited some people that I really love and trust and respect to take me to school, to give me a moment to sit in their shoes and to imagine what it's like to experience life from their perspective. I hope you will join me this morning as we have what might be a difficult conversation, but I want you to stay in it with courage and grace and humility. Let's get started. This is Justin Ulrich, pastor of Terraforma Church, and I am privileged here to sit down this evening with some people that I really love and respect. And my heart here is to listen and learn, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. But my goal here is that, we are in this moment of time where I don't know how much you need to hear from me, but I know that I need to be listening during this time and learning during this moment. And I'm frustrated. I've got a heavy heart. I'm bothered by the violence that I'm seeing. So I think it's time to check our hearts, and it's time to listen and to learn. And so I hope in this conversation we can get to a spot where we can understand what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes with a different shaped story. Everybody has a unique story and has been in a unique journey. So why don't we introduce ourselves?
I'm Bill Mines. I'm deep into I'm a volunteer at Terraforma Church for its infancy, and I do a lot with them, and I just love the family and the support that we provide for each other.
I'm Michael Mines. I'm William Mines' oldest and more handsome brother. I've done about 36 years in federal law enforcement, Homeland Security, intelligence, and also in the private sector. And I was asked to join this conversation. I think it's a timely conversation. I think it's a required conversation, and I welcome the opportunity to participate.
My name is Leon Battle. I am a social worker, used to work in the church, and work with a lot of children who are children of color and minorities, and just work in helping elevate those children. And very glad to be joining this discussion. I've known Pastor for quite a long time now. He was actually my youth pastor, and just really honored to be asked to be a part of this call today.
Thanks, Leon. Heather.
Hey, I am Heather Henderson. I waited till last because I was trying to get my husband to get my kids to be quiet, so he didn't have the background sound of my kids. I'm relatively new to Terraforma. I just moved to Virginia last summer from Montgomery County, Maryland. I lived there for 13 years. Was a public school teacher there for a number of years, and then became a pastor, and was a pastor for youth pastor, and then an associate pastor for about a decade or so. And I'm new to Terraforma relatively, and have been hanging out with the high school youth group and some other groups trying to just figure out a way to partner with the Kingdom Good in Virginia.
Awesome. Hey, thank you all for being here. Hey, can we start the conversation with, so I posted, frustration after Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. I posted something with a little bit of frustration and just trying to get my head around this. It seems senseless to me. And Bill, you commented that, hey, this is not new. It's just that we have cameras on it right now. Can we talk about this?
This has been a hard week for our family. This has been building up for a long time. My brother and I we have conversations all the time about events like this has been going on for quite a long time. Like I told you, this has been going on, but now we have cameras. It's been being recorded, and and today's technology is right in your face immediately, and the impact is devastating to a lot of people. And it's nothing new. It's been going on for many, many years. If you take away the year 2020 and put 1960, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that's been going on then, and it's the same stuff that's going on right now. But now you can just see it immediately in our faces.
Mm-hmm.
If I could add to that, Justin, I'm a 62-year-old man going on 63. I know I don't look it, but I am. And William can attest to this. When I first started driving at age 16 in DC, my father had with me the talk. Now, I don't know if you know what a talk is, but if you talk to most African Americans, they'll tell you what the talk is. And the talk is how to act if you were pulled over by the police. Now, this is when I was 16 years old. His concern was that I was going to be pulled over by the wrong police officer. I was going to say the wrong thing, whatever that was, and have my head bashed in. So this is in the early 70s. As Bill said, what you're seeing now has been happening since I was little. And we have been warned about that since we were little. And one of my biggest fears right now, like William and I talk about this every day, I have a 31-year-old son who lives in North Carolina. My biggest fear right now is he's going to get pulled over by an officer who's going to see him as a threat and respond in a violent fashion. So that weight, that stress, that concern that my father had when I was younger, I experience now every day. Every day.
Mike, I think it's helpful for you in particular to speak into that tension as a law enforcement professional. My dad was a cop, a sheriff. He's a professor of law enforcement now. And so I understand why people really want to say, not all cops are bad. It's not a cop thing, like really get kind of worked up about that. And I understand where that's coming from. But two things can be true at the same time. Of course, not all cops are bad. And also, this is the experience of people of color enough times with law enforcement that it requires that families have the talk. And, for you to, as a law enforcement professional, I'm sure you would hail your law enforcement colleagues and sing praises and have loved it, I would imagine. But this other thing is also true.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the majority are, good people, want to do the right thing and do the right thing, right? But you do have some folk, I would say in almost every law enforcement agency, including mine, which was the FBI, they have problems. We did everything we could, to address them. So, what I think part of the discussion today, Justin, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is how do we address this issue that we see today beyond law enforcement? why do we have this explosion of violence, right?
Yeah.
As William said, I was angry, I was frustrated, I was sad. I'm losing sleep because it could be me, it could be my son.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I'm a 62-year-old man. I was pulled over by the police maybe a year ago. If we, just to give you a little bit of insight, I was coming back from a business trip. I was in an SUV. I was driving. It was a rented SUV, black, with Florida plates on 270. So I had two of my white colleagues sitting in the back of the SUV. I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw this police cruiser following me for a long while. And I said to the guys in the car, I said, they're going to pull me over. He said, for what? I said, listen, I don't know what. They're going to pull me over. Mm-hmm. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do the speed limit, because what happens is they follow you until they find a reason to pull you over, whether you change lanes without a signal, whatever. So I got all the way over to my right-hand lane. I slowed down to 55 on 270. And in 5 minutes, got pulled over. And the guys in the car couldn't believe it. And by the time the car got up to me, 2 other cars had arrived. So we now had 6 officers on the car, looking through it, peeking into the back seat. And I said, why did you pull me over? Well, you were going too slow. So, cars are zooming by me 75, 80 miles an hour, but I'm going too slow. I was suspicious. They pulled me over.
Yeah.
I'm a 60-year-old man. So it still happens to this day. And I have 3 or 4 stories that way. And I'm sure everybody has stories. I identified myself as an agent to a cop one time. I was working drugs, sitting on surveillance. Cop pulls up, unsnaps his holster. Hey, what are you doing here? Pull up my creds. Hey, FBI agent. I'm working, can't tell you what I'm doing, can't tell you who I'm following, but, law enforcement. The guy looks me square in the eye and says, I don't believe you. So I had to call radio my white agents who were also in the area, come to my car where I was, show this cop the same creds, the same badge that I had before he believed that I was an agent. And then he goes away. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem, and that's the frustration. I think it's the promise of this country, right? The promise is you work hard, you pay your taxes, you keep your nose clean, and you still have to worry about having a violent confrontation with a law enforcement officer for doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I'm hearing all kinds of rhetoric right now, and I'm hearing a lot of willingness to learn and a lot of compassion right now. I really am hearing that. I think historically, I hear maybe more defensiveness than I am in the moment right now, but I think there's something that there's something defensive when you just cannot imagine this scenario where it's like, okay, so you had to show some credentials. What's the big deal? The big deal is that's threatening. Well, when he walks up on you and unsnaps his holster,
yeah,
it is a threat of violence. And every moment has all of the moments of history behind it. It has your personal history. It has our nation's history. It has our culture's history behind those interactions and moments. And we have to begin to change the script here. And I don't know what to say. That makes me very frustrated.
It starts at home. It's about teaching your kids.
Yeah.
And our kids have been taught not to have those racist tendencies, because racism is a taught behavior. And it's been taught, many generations. And hopefully right now, has awakened a new generation to educate their children. And so that the future, we won't have this problem. It's going to take a long time to change the mindset of a lot of people. Because a lot of people see or saw George Floyd, and they would say, "Well, what did he do?" And what kind of question is that? I'm like, I wish people would put themselves in that situation and see how they would feel about that. And it's just very frustrating to see this. The young man got shot in Georgia, and George Floyd, the New York incident. With the woman calling the cops on the guy because she didn't want to put the dog on a leash. And it was just in the past few weeks, but this stuff's been going on for a long time. It just builds up, and people just explode, and that's why you see the protests across the nation. I think it's just finally reached a point of people have had enough of this, and we are where we are right now.
Yeah, I think Bill is he has a point of. And no one is born racist, but just like air, as soon as you are born, you start ingesting just systems and so many people talk about being privileged, and there's just things that they're different from group to group or from race to race of how we experience things. And I think, one, it is great to hear from people of color like we are right now, listening to Michael's stories and hearing how things have affected him and what has happened to him. And I think there's also a responsibility that we all have and people who can't relate to be able to do some studying on their own as well. And, there's some amazing authors out there and amazing resources. There's amazing documentaries and even movies that have been made that speak to a history of systematic oppression or a history of racism. And I think as you begin to look at that, you're looking at the past experiences of others. And then I think there's a heart check that we all need to do as well to look at where our own privilege is. Yeah. And so, people can get defensive sometimes with that privilege word and say, well, I grew up poor, or I grew up with these issues. And I don't think people are angry. People aren't angry because people have privilege. They're just saying, hey, you have a responsibility. Sometimes it's just the color of your skin can get you into doors and get you on platforms that maybe a person of color can't get into. And so maybe sometimes with somebody who's not going to have a voice somewhere, you can be that voice. Or even better, if you can provide a platform for somebody of color to have their voice projected to others, then that's even better. And so sometimes it's checking our own privileges and what advantages that we have that we can use to reach back and pull up our brothers and sisters. And so I think as you listen to people, as you read and study, and as you check your own heart and your own privilege, we can all begin to learn how we can make more equity for everyone around us.
Mm-hmm. Bill, I totally agree with what both of you have said, and appreciate the perspective. Bill, you said it starts at home, and I agree with that. And you said something about kids are taught racism or racist things, or they catch it, right? We're taught, or it's caught. They catch it by interactions with their families. And the thing for me that if white people could hear me speaking from a place of love as a white woman, is that it's not just enough to not be racist, right? Like that was the game changer for me. And I haven't arrived anywhere, and I'm still learning. I still fight against racist thoughts that come to my mind, or classist thoughts, or sexist thoughts, because I'm imperfect. But the game changer for me was learning about being actively anti-racist. And I think it's important for our Terraforma families to think about this. I first read that term in a book in grad school by an author named Beverly Tatum. It's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together at the Cafeteria? And she came from the perspective of education. I was getting my master's in education at the time. And she describes this idea that the cycle of racism is like a moving walkway at an airport. And you've got active racists who are on the moving walkway and they're walking, right? They're walking. Then you've got passive racists who are on the moving walkway. They're not walking. They're not going really anywhere of their own volition, but because they're on the moving walkway, they're kind of ending up at the same place.
This is the idea, like maybe they're benefiting from their privilege at someone else's expense, even if it happens subconsciously.
It's that, and it's that they're still living in this system and in this place that's leading toward racism. Right? Like it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm not racist, I don't do X. It requires, I believe, of white people to say, I will actively be the opposite of racist, which means I will begin to do Y, right? I will begin to educate myself about the data and the facts and the experiences of people of color. I will begin to look at some of the systemic nature of racism in our laws and our housing policies, within our police community in so many ways. It's not enough for me to say to my family, oh, kids, God made everybody equal and we're all the same and tra-la-la. Well, no, because my Black friends are experiencing the world differently. And so I need to tell my kids that. I need to teach them, here's what happened when your buddy next door, here's what his parents have to say to him. And my white kids need to know that, so that they can A, begin seeing their privilege, and B, from a young age, begin to act in ways that make it less likely that their friends of color are going to have these experiences in their generation.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I just heard, Mike, you mentioned the talk. I just heard the talk referenced last month. It was the first time in my life I'd ever been exposed to this idea that
because
Black young men and women have to be told, here's how you need to interact with the police so you can live.
To build on that, you're absolutely right, because you've never had to hear that.
I never have.
Right.
And William has seen this book. It's called Survival Guide. Got to put my glasses on, I'm sorry. How Not to Get Killed by the Police, right?
Yeah.
This was written by a friend of mine who is an ex-FBI agent. He's now a practicing attorney, and he wrote this pamphlet for young Black men. So I mentor young Black men. I've done it for about 10 years now, and I've given them a copy of this book. And it talks about how you handle yourself when you're pulled over. How do you handle yourself when you're stopped on the sidewalk? It's sad that we have to do this, but it's an extension of my father's talk. Something else Heather said, which is on point. I've been talking to some of the guys that I mentor over the last couple of days since this has happened. And after we get through the frustration and the anger and the marching and all that stuff, I asked them, okay, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do, right? We understand the frustration and all that, but beyond the marching and the unfortunately the looting, what are you wanting to do to push this forward? We are at a historic time in our country, I believe, but we've seen this before. The big question is, what are we going to do? And Heather, you're absolutely right. Educate yourself. Learn more about it. We have to go beyond just what we see on the news. Why all the frustration? Why the violence? Where have we been? What systems need to be fixed?
Yeah.
And if I could recommend a couple movies to you, because I watch these movies here, and I make my children watch them, which sometimes they want to, sometimes they don't. So one is called Glory. It's a movie about, if you've seen it already, you know what I'm talking about. And the other is 12 Years a Slave.
Yep.
That was, I read the book and the movie, but it kind of drops you into the history of this country, when it comes to African Americans and what they've gone through, that history that is not necessarily taught in our school system, right? And that's part of that frustration.
And I think that's one of the things that has been lost is the lack of knowing the history. It's been glossed over so bad in the school systems. Kids and adults, white adults, don't know any of the history.
Yeah.
I can't watch the movie 12 Years a Slave because it's too real to me, and I get very upset. I remember going to the museum, Afro-American museum in D.C., and the Emmett Till's pictures, and I was standing next to another picture. I saw this young man he was hung just because apparently he looked at a white woman or whistled at a white woman. And I'm reading about it, and I can feel myself getting heated up and breathing heavy. And this white woman standing next to me, looking at me in fear. She was like, oh my God! And I said, I need to calm down.
Yeah.
And get out of this place. But it's education that we need to have, because it's been glossed over so much that it's not even history. It's not even what you hear now is not even history. You hear from Martin Luther King and the guy who made the peanuts. That's about it. And to get into so much history, and it's so raw and so real that it doesn't want to be told, because it brings white people into the light of them being bad and evil. That's what they want. They don't want that to be projected out there.
I think, Bill, too, I think there are many people right now who would say some version of, well, but that is ancient history. That's not me. I didn't do that.
Right.
That's a long time ago, kind of a thing. And one of the things that I'm pressing into right now personally is the idea that the seeds of all evil live in my heart too. That I'm capable of violence and prejudice. I'm capable of judging somebody for some crazy, sinful reason that has nothing to do with their heart or character and nothing to do with the gospel of Jesus. That I have the ability to prefer systems that benefit me at the expense of another, and that all that can live inside of my heart, and I think that it requires a great deal of courage, even to wrestle down, like, hey, I don't wake up every day and actively put hate out towards anybody. Yet there is still racism and prejudice that I have to wrestle out. David prayed to God, search my heart, search me, and see if there's any wicked way in me. Examine me deep and see if there's anything in me that I need to get rid of. And I think, you talked about it starting at home. I think another big move here, especially for white people who are asking, well, how do I engage this? Is start with your own heart.
Right.
Like, examine that,
Right.
And
I do. I think it's examine your own heart, examine your life, examine your thought patterns. And also, it's not enough to just say, well, I didn't do racist acts in the past, because we're not blaming you for something that you haven't done. We're hurt because of things you haven't done, which is advocate and listen to people of color. The Bible says, be slow to speak and be quick to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so have we even started with, how are you doing? What have you experienced? What are you going through? And you're right, learn and then search your heart and then get involved. I think the hardest thing for me is I live in a predominantly white community, and I have a lot of close friends that are white. I'm actually half white myself. So it's interesting, even for me, I have a lot of family in Frostproof. Not one of them in Frostproof would speak to me because I am a mixed child. I live within a predominantly white community, and I have a lot of friends that I consider as my dearest friends. And when all of this was happening, their voices were nowhere to be heard. And I'm not just talking about you know, social media is the only place to speak up. I'm not saying it has to be on social media. That might be a good platform for people to speak up. But I'm saying in any aspect of society, they weren't saying anything. And I was trying to explain, do you understand that George reminds me of me?
Yeah.
That the Tamir Rice reminds me of me? That all of these Black men who have been killed, they all remind me of me. They remind me of my father because I've gone through very similar things. And by you not speaking up, it makes me feel like my life doesn't matter to you enough. And so I think that's what I was feeling hurt about was, man, just do something. Just ask me how I'm doing. Speak out to it. When you hear people say something, nip it at the bud. Don't let those conversations go on. See what you can do in your own community to lift people up as well. And so I think that's the big thing is it's not blame because, you know, of racist things that have happened in the past, but it's examining your heart and seeing where you have some prejudice and seeing what you are doing today to help those who are hurting.
So, Leon, I'm hearing Bill and you and Mike also. There's a wound here, and that wound creates pain. And every time this happens, that wound is reopened, and that wound is there, and that is a very present reality.
Well, the wound hasn't healed, and I think part of it is, Justin, is that we African Americans can't heal this wound.
No.
Without you,
Right.
because you're part of it, right? And going back to an earlier comment you made about, well, people say that's ancient history. Well, U.S. history is ancient history, but we learn it every year in school. We force our kids to learn it. 4th of July, we celebrate what? Ancient history, right?
Absolutely.
Celebrate it. So that ancient history argument doesn't hold water. Now, you know, we have every year in schools in this country, you know, Black History Month, right? Started out as Black History Week, now it's Black History Month. We talk about, as William said, the guy with the peanut and Michael Jordan. But my thought is, why is it Black History Month? Because it's American history.
That's right.
It's the history of this country. It's my history, it's your history. So I think people get defensive when they hear folk talk about this racial issue and slavery. People get defensive. Well, that was a long time ago. I'm not racist, so that ain't me. Yep. No, just because we talk about it, we're not saying that you are that. You can't address a problem until you acknowledge it. And unfortunately, there's a line from slavery to today, as far as this country is concerned, the story of this country. But we tend to turn away from that and say everything is okay. You've had a Black president, so everything is fine. Yep. And that's just not it. So until that is addressed honestly and talked about openly, and then we can walk towards each other knowing that my heart's imperfect, your heart's imperfect, but what are we going to do? We're going to gather together and try to fix this together. We will never get to where we need to be. And we're just it'll just be a matter of time until we have another incident where either a private citizen is going to kill a African-American male or female, because we've had both, or a law enforcement officer is going to do it because we still have these issues. And that's the only way we're going to get around it. And the other point I want to make is with, Martin Luther King was the, leader of the civil rights movement in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. Malcolm X also was a leader in civil issues. They had a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But the similarity is they were both men of God.
Yep.
They had different gods, but they were both religious men. So my point is, when I ask, what are you going to do? The healing of this country throughout history has been led by religious leaders. It starts in the church. So it goes back to the conversation about heart, about belief, about the teachings of Christ and how we are supposed to treat each other. If that is used as the guide, then we can walk and heal this.
Yeah.
So we turn to our politicians to pass laws to fix this. That's not going to do it.
Yep.
It's not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be what Bill said is teaching at home. Yep. Parents are the best teachers of their children, and the rules we live by.
Yep.
And that's going to be, in my opinion, a religious-led effort. Always has been.
Mike, you mentioned Dr. King, and I just wanted to throw out there, every year on MLK Day, we're posting memes and these short little, proof texted things that he said. And I wholeheartedly encourage anyone who is a Christ follower and a white American to read Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail.
Yeah, absolutely.
He writes to what he calls the white moderate, and we have turned Martin Luther King Jr. into to who we white America want him to be, someone that is safe and we're comfortable with.
Yep.
And there is a whole lot more to his character and what he believed in. He was fed up and frustrated with his white brothers and sisters in the church, and we need to hear that. And it's not that long of a read. It's a very good read. I also wanted to say, Bill, you said when you were at the African American History Museum, you begin having an emotional experience and you realize that the white woman next to you was alarmed by that. And I not enough white people see that is an example of systemic racism, that you as a Black man cannot safely feel and share your emotions for fear of how white people are going to respond. And my friends, white people do not experience that like that.
No,
right?
I have the privilege to get angry.
Correct.
And people don't freak out. And if Leon or Bill or Mike got angry, it's experienced differently. That is racism. I agree.
And Bill wasn't even
There's
so
a
much
name that
angry.
you're going to be called because you're angry.
An angry Black man or an angry white woman
or a thug.
Exactly.
Or an N-word. There's going to be a lot of things that could potentially come out just based on that anger. And I think, we're talking about, I keep hearing the words, that's ancient history. And I think about it, and civil rights weren't that long ago. The massacre in Tulsa was only 99 years ago. There are people alive today that were alive during that time. Civil rights weren't that long ago. I encourage people, if they go to different cities, go on tours of those cities. I was just in Birmingham and did the civil rights tour there and learned more about Shuttlesworth and learned about the protests that were going on there. And it's not that long ago. I mean, I talked to my grandmother, and she'd tell me stories. And then I talked to my father, where they lived in a neighborhood where they weren't accepted. And as he'd walk home from school, people would light matches and they'd throw it in the Black girl's hair because they knew the Black girl's hair was greasy. They were trying to get them out of that neighborhood. My father's only 63 years old. He's not that old. And so I heard those stories, and then I experienced racism on my own as well. I grew up with a white mother, so I didn't get that talk all the time. So I got pulled over. I'd get searched for drugs. I was threatened to be beaten. I was always accused of having firearms on me. And people would never believe that when I tell them, because they're like, not Leon. You're just the nicest guy. You're doing all of this social work. You're doing all of this work. But it's that first impression that people see. When they see me, I'm still seen as a threatening Black man. And so while it's not that, we say it's ancient history, it's really not as far as we think.
No, Leon, it's happening right now.
Exactly.
It's happening right now. And then you think about all of the frustration And people are, why are they so mad? Why are they breaking things? Why is this going on? While I don't condone that violence, I have empathy for the reason that they are lashing out. I work with human trafficking victims, and many of the human trafficking victims that I work with, they have been raped at a young age and they've been trafficked. The craziest thing is then you see those girls trafficking other girls, or if we get them to a safe location, they are destroying the houses that we have them in. They're lashing out in anger. I do not condone the behavior that they are doing, but I have empathy because of what they've gone through.
Yeah.
And sometimes with the African American community, we are not getting the empathy because of what they've gone through time and time and time again. We're automatically blaming them and yelling at them and telling them you're not doing it right. And that's where that anger comes from. So we don't need to condone it, but we need to have empathy and understanding of where they're coming from.
Yeah.
This has been building for a while. This country, everyone, all of us, we need to listen to the frustration, and then they have to see change.
Mm-hmm.
Change not only from a governmental standpoint, but a change in our partners in this.
Yep.
And that's white America. We got to see that change. If we don't understand that we're not in this together, we're not going to succeed.
I was thinking what Heather said earlier, what a white person is going to do. You're not going to be, what can I do next? And can you imagine if Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers took a knee with Colin Kaepernick, the change that would have made in that protest? It would have been a whole different narrative, because those guys are the white, and they were the superstars of the NFL. Because it got turned completely around, like Michael said. Anti-American, I hate America, whatever. And that was far from the truth. And I have a problem with bringing that up, because I have a conversation with people, and white people, and they don't hear that side. All they see him is being anti-American, and they don't even know why he was taking a knee, and they don't want to know.
Yeah.
So that's the very frustrating part to me. I've even lost a client because of the differences in that. He couldn't see the racism that was going on in this country right now. And we just couldn't work together anymore. It's very frustrating.
We disguise that racism behind patriotism sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Very frustrating.
Together. And I think, like you're saying, Bill, and I want to thank people, especially white people, who have come out and said things. There's been so many killings that have happened recently in the past decade where Black people were the only ones speaking up, and it was being silenced. That's where the whole all lives matter came through, and Blue Lives Matter. And we do understand that those lives do matter, but we're saying that Black lives are mattering right now because they are being killed. And I'll tell you, there's been such a huge shift in this last month, because I saw white person after white person after white person saying, I'm going to stand in solidarity. I cannot allow this to happen anymore. I'm going to use my voice and speak up. And I'll tell you what, it set a fire in people. It was very contagious in what was happening. And now we see more people than ever getting behind this. It's because a few people started to use their voice and it caught on. And it was that trickle effect of more and more people wanting to get behind it. And so I just want to thank people who have stood up already, who've said things, and who are looking to figure out how they can get even more engaged. So thank you. And thank you, Justin, for this.
Heather, you said this, that it's not enough to just not be a racist.
Right.
We have to now actively be anti-racist.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I encourage people to do research of what that means, to be actively anti-racist. There's lots of great books out there. There's a new book out by Ibram Kendi. I think it's called How to Be Anti-Racist. And Austin Channing Brown wrote this book called I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. That is very good. It talks about being anti-racist, and she comes from a church perspective that I think is particularly helpful for Terraforma. And I feel like for white people, from my experience, from being a part of these conversations and and trying to grow in my anti-racism, I feel like there's a couple of things. One, white people are afraid to say the wrong thing. So
Yes.
sometimes they don't say anything.
I definitely, I hear that right now a lot.
Yeah.
I hear people saying,
I don't know.
I'm not, I want to speak up, but I'm afraid of being shamed for saying the wrong thing. Like if what I express isn't worded the perfect way, I think I'm going to get backlash.
And my thing is, get over it. Like, sorry. And, you know, Black people have been afraid of what they're going to say and how they're going to say it and how they're going to present themselves and whom they're going to be next to and every dimension of their personhood.
That's really good.
Very long. Like, I understand, you know, even before I came on this call, I asked some dear friends, you know, just pray for me to use my words well and that sort of thing. So I understand the sentiment behind wanting to say the right thing. But that is a smokescreen to me. Like, I say something, and guess what? You're going to be wrong. You're going to say the wrong thing. And the more you do it, the more you're going to realize that there is racism embedded in your heart and your mind. And the more you're going to be able to catch yourself the next time.
Yep.
Well, the thought is that there's, you know, when you have an honest conversation, no matter what the topic is, there's no right thing to say, there's no wrong thing to say, there's just the truth, right? So, you know, beginning that conversation, having that interchange, that exchange of information is a start. And when you have honest conversations, you run the risk of offending somebody. You know, I've done it a lot. If any of you are married, you probably have been in that situation where you said something and you kind of get through it, right? And then you're closer and you have a better understanding after that. So, you know, that would be my advice. Just jump in, right? Just jump in.
One of the things that I really want to say as a pastor, you know, as a leader of a congregation, is that racism is a sin issue. I think sometimes that people treat this like, oh, it's this uncomfortable piece of heritage, or no, it's evil. It is a sin issue. It is that we have at the very bedrock of the Jesus movement is this idea that I'm supposed to live into a story of selfless, sacrificial love for the other. That the examples that Jesus gives me about what it means to love my neighbor as myself, his most famous example is somebody from a different tribe, somebody from a different culture. You know, it's love goes to the other. And I'm actually supposed to love in the way that I would want to be loved. And this idea that, you know, I don't want to live in a world where I have to explain to my children how to survive an encounter with the police because of how they look. And so as a follower of Jesus, it's my responsibility to hear your stories, that you have to give that talk to your kids. And I'm supposed to put myself in your shoes, and I'm supposed to imagine what it would be like to be worried about my son every time I turn on the TV and I see this kind of news. I'm supposed to put myself in your place and go, wait a minute. If I wouldn't want that world for me, I cannot live in that world when that's your story. And so I have to now wake up and begin to become active, helping change your story, because that's what I'm called to do as a follower of Jesus. And I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your candor and your courage. I have so much respect for you. This has helped me a lot. It really has. It's opened my eyes, and it's moved my heart. And I hope that this is not the last time we have a conversation like this. This is, you know, one of the things we have to protect against is, okay, so it's a hot moment right now. I do believe we are in a historic moment in time. I really do believe that. This fire has to outlast the moment, because we need something to break here. We need to burn out this is an issue of cultural systemic sin that needs to be refined and burned out of the human story. We got to get this fixed. And so, if in 2 months Twitter has moved on to something else, we don't have that luxury as followers of Jesus. We have to stay in the tension, and we have to even stay in this. You don't change until it hurts you, right? I mean, you don't do anything different until you feel the pain of staying the same. So that's my prayer for Terraforma, and I just appreciate all of you and the time you gave.
The one thing that we need to be sensitive of when we're telling people to go make changes, we do this internationally sometimes where we decide we're going to go overseas and we're going to bring America overseas and change those communities to look more like America while stripping them of their culture and their identity. Don't as well. It's not that we need a white savior to come into African-American communities and change them and make them more white. And even just saying that is weird to say, but to just say, hey, empower those, give them a platform, advocate through your votes, advocate towards donating towards their causes, and find ways, ask a person of color how you can help that community that's disenfranchised, instead of just wanting to rush right in and try to do one big act or one big bravado act and then leave. Sometimes that will leave that community more broken than it will help.
That's beautiful, Leon.
So
It's
well
really
said.
important.
I have to agree with you, Leon. And I also want to say that don't make this a political thing. This is not Democratic, Republican. This is a human being. Humans are being killed, being beaten, and being just torn down. It just needs to be changed. So education is the key. And just like I said, ask questions. If you have any doubts, just come up and ask. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And I would also add, kind of temper your expectations. This is a long walk, right?
Yeah.
It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
It's a long walk. There's a lot of history here. There are a lot of feeling here. There's a lot of emotion here. So, as you said, Justin, earlier, some people are reluctant to talk about this, or they shy away. It's a difficult conversation. But people will come around hopefully on their own time. But as the leader of the church and what you want to do, realize it's a marathon. It's a long walk, and that's fine, right? As long as there's a clear vision as to where you want to go, and what that end game is, keep walking, and that's key. I know when I was a young man, when I used to have these conversations with some of my partners in the bureau, it was, you knucklehead, you ain't getting it, right? I'm hitting you with the hammer on the forehead, and you just don't understand. I didn't have the patience. As I've gotten older, I realized that there's history on the other side too.
I would say my 3 ways you can get engaged is educate yourself. So look up some resources. There's some great books. There's some great podcasts. Right now there's a podcast called 1619. I'm enjoying that. There's some books. Book I'm reading right now is called White Fragility, and I'm also reading Dr. Martin Luther King's book. I think it's called Where Do We Go From Here? I'm reading that. Watch some documentaries. Educate yourself. Call one of your brothers or sisters who are people of color. Check on them. Listen to their stories. Talk to them, and then look into how you can help. Just pockets right in your community. It doesn't have to go through, like we were just saying, national government. Sometimes reaching into your community, talking to your local mayor or your local commissioners about what we can do for those communities would go a very, very, very far way. And the last thing I would say is go ahead and donate. There's some great organizations. I would say go ahead and screen them, talk to them, figure out what your money is going to be used for. But sometimes giving that platform as well is extremely important.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Justin, for putting together this platform and doing this and spending your time on this and making this a focus for your church. The church definitely needs to step up. I mean, we see stories of the Great Samaritan, and we realize, listen, it's people who are different from one another in different ways need to realize they need to reach down and they need to help them up. And just like Jesus left the 99 for the one, we need to go for the ones that are hurting and broken during those times. And sometimes that requires us to leave the other things that we may have been concerned about and focusing on that. And so thank you for making your church a refuge for hope and a safe place for people.
Awesome, Leon.
He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I'm unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. So we are his portion, he's our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. Grace is an ocean we're all sinking. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart beats violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. How he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us.